Alright, time for another physics video presentation. Okay, got that part done with. The hard part. Okay, so maybe we'll do comments and I don't know, stuff like that. And so I did, attempt to, I don't know what you want to call it, badger, a little bit. Conspiracy Cats or whatever the other name is for his channel, and this is the channel where they do debates and they call it Agree to Disagree, which is kind of a funny name for a debate channel, right? Because frankly, what do you mean? Agreeing to disagree? Is that a rational thing to do? I don't really think it's rational to agree to disagree, right? Because in a lot of cases, the subject matter is kind of important, right? You're not going to bother debating if the subject isn't important. So why would you agree to disagree? Agree to hate each other intensely, maybe. But yeah, I don't think agreeing to disagree kind of works as a concept. But anyway, doesn't matter. I probably should do a lot of things. So I'll do some comments and some of this, and then I'll do some physics and blah, blah, blah. So I said to him, conventional physics has no rational model of any force. So we're just told that there's the major forces are either some sort of bent thing, magical bent nothing, or a force carrier thing. Okay, so field of nothing, something, who knows what, that somehow perturbates, it expands and contracts or something, this stuff, ether, whatever. But there's no description what the hell that crap is or what it does or how it works. How much would I have to pay you per hour for the opportunity to publicly interrogate the credibility of your physics dogmatic truth? So, same question I asked before, just like I said, that's a little bit rude, but you got to be a little rude to get any attention. It's just a fact. I mean, they don't pay any attention. Can't still use the makes not pleasant comments excuse to hide from me, Mr. Cowardly Cats. So that was a little bit, But the truth is, he just keeps evading something that seems a good subject for debate, right? So even on his regular channel, he should now and then feel kind of obligated, not just to make fools and make fun of retards, conspiracy nuts, people who are really crazy. They're just desperate to make something, to make everything about society wrong by making something stupid like flat earth right. I mean, they obviously have some psychological issue that's making them believe in these insane conspiracies. I mean, conspiracies involving millions and millions and millions, hundreds of millions of people. I mean, it's an insane theory. So he sees value in that, but he doesn't see value. I mean, he sees value in, basically making videos telling people, well, don't be as crazy as these people. Unless you're already as crazy as these people, right? I mean, somehow watching the video will stop them from becoming crazy? I don't think so. I think crazy is something else that goes on. It's not a thinking process. Thinking doesn't make you crazy. Some other thing does. Anyway. So you would think they just on their own would want to shore up their own crapola, their own religion, their own evolution theory, and show us how it's evolution, it's evolution, it's evolution. And they don't do that. And when they do it, I can point out how they do it so badly, right? As I play Feynman videos, and I play Susskind, and I play Lewin, and I play all these people saying shit that they really shouldn't be saying. And I show how their experiments are flawed and how their interpretations are huge leaps to conclusion based on very scant information and all that kind of crap. But that should be a concern of theirs, that they really haven't proven the things they're asserting to be the truth. Big bangs, all this kind of stuff. They have very little evidence. Anyway, so he says, we have been through this. Why do you want to throw your money away? So again, asking this rhetorical questions that are just kind of idiotic. I mean, obviously, I don't think it's not an unworthy cause to demonstrate physicists and people who defend physics to be full of shit, to be flat earth stupid. So instead of flat earthers, see, they're not flat earth crazy, they're flat earth stupid. Okay, but anyway, what will it achieve for you other than emptying your wallet? So this assumption that nobody can assail our perfect physics. I mean, nobody could show how we made a mistake or were flawed in our judgment, or any of this is just, nobody could show how it's a religion. When, yeah, I think you can do that pretty easily, and I have done it. And so he won't watch any of the content, though. So he just knows there's no way you can, prove that I'm saying horse shit, or that I'm teaching it in schools. He's so arrogant. So I said, what it will show is that your science is as fact baseless as the other religions, that it's just a religion. Tiny bit of storytelling that might have been true, and all the rest is fish stories. All the rest is just insane exaggerations and, virginal births and all this kind of horse shit. Anyway, and then he responds, really? Question mark. Do you really think it is worth your hard-earned money to try to prove a point that will change nothing for anyone? So if I were to actually demonstrate that your physics is a religion, that would change nothing for anyone? That these key concepts are not true, that there is no time dimension, that there's just these little physical causes, that there's no wooey Heisenberg nonsense about things not knowing where the war is, there's no superposition, there's no entanglement. All of these things are baseless, mushy little silly stories. No, that won't change anything. I think it might change something. Anyway, do you really think debating a high school science teacher on the entirety of high level, so I thought that was kind of funny, academic physics is going to make people think physics is fake? So, I mean, really, there's nothing high level about the foundational experiments, and that's certainly been clear in these conversations. So, but he's basically saying, oh, yeah, well, I'm too dumb to defend physics. I'm smart enough to mock crazy people, but he's not smart enough to defend the parts they believe, their religion. He can attack other people's religion, but he can't defend his own, right? And there's lots of religious people who do that, right? I mean, they sit in their glass house and throw the stones of how ludicrous your religion is at the other people, while they have the same, silly foundation for their nonsense. If you are willing to pay for this, you are either very rich or very deluded. So, you don't have any evidence that either one of those are the reason. But whatever, again, it's just their assumption. Nobody can assail us. So I would argue that it does look that way. All the people who say, or the naysayers, do seem to be all the tinfoil hat people, and they don't make very good arguments, and so that is a tragic liability. If it's the former, then sure. But see, that's the way it always is, right? All the other people who theorized at Einstein's time, right? All the other physicists were all wrong, and only Einstein was right. So that's, unfortunately, that's how it does work. Anyway, I'll take your money, but I fear it is the latter. Yes, well, it's very cute, but it doesn't mean much. Debating a high school science teacher on the entirety of high-level academic physics. So I said, you apparently think it's worth debating flat earth fakers and fools. Do you think any reasonable people need to see that debunked? So, I mean, he's selling and for money, profiting from making fun of idiots. And yet he sees no value, okay, in defending their own idiocy. Okay. The foundations of quantum mechanics and space-time are, we got to read more, silly interpretations of poorly analyzed and aggressively misdescribed experiments. I thought that was well stated. And that fact is as easily shown as the round Earth. I mean, you really can just play their videos and point out how they can't draw it right, they can't describe it right. I mean, I'm still stunned by the Fermilab guy, right? To pretend that the Eddington experiment was about seeing a sun, a star behind the sun. I mean, to think that's what the experiment was attempting to do is just so bad for a guy at a nuclear accelerator. I mean, that's really and they drew graphics and everything. So the guy who was drawing the graphics, the guy who produced, any helpers he has with producing his video, not one of them really knew what the Eddington experiment did. Not one of them. All right, professional physics isn't any more supported by real evidence than flat earth mush. And that's sort of the truth, right? It's all engineered, it's all quote mined. So just like the flat earthers, they quote mine the bizarre image, created by a whole bunch of noise and different things that happen. The cigar image for the UFO people. They take the aberrant experimental result, the aberrant temperature sensor, the aberrant this, the aberrant that, and they try to convert it into evidence, like the Piro taking the noise experiment and saying that demonstrates interference with plane waves. What if I'm right and you have been teaching crap? Yes, that's the assertion. Why don't you prove you have nothing to fear? And so, okay, well, if you super chat $700 next time this debate show is on, yeah, right. Then I will debate you on the entirety of physics at $700 an hour. Yeah, well, I don't think I'm going to do that. I mean, all of physics might take 100 lectures, right? 100 hours worth. So, yeah, I'm not paying you $700,000. However, it will it will be a debate. It will be a debate, and you will have to defend your position. Yeah, that's what the whole idea is I want to defend the position that the evidence is really, really, really weak. It's thin, tiny, vaporous. You have so little evidence. You have no Darwin book chronicling anything here. You got so little. My advice is you save your money. Yeah, well, that's very nice. Blah, 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 blah. The entirety of physics. How much per hour just to defend the wrong, simplistic physics junk you teach in high school? So, yeah, let's just do the crap you do in high school, right? In high school, you draw that silly wavy thing. At least they did in my high school. And then they talk about this bent space crap, and they might even show you an example of space being, a fabric or something with a dimple in it. And, yeah, let's talk about whether that's realistic. Like, it's, you're using gravity to just demonstrate the creation of gravity. It seems a huge cheat to use the very thing you're supposed to be explaining. You admit you don't know much real physics. I don't know if that's exactly what he said, but yes, that's my paraphrase. As you're just a glorified babysitter, then ask for $700 an hour, right? Yeah, like what's so special? Apparently you are a delusional flat earth economist. So, yeah, a little joke there. Doesn't do basic economics very well if he thinks he's worth $700 an hour. Okay, I accept you don't want to do this. So that's me conceding. Okay, look, I'm badgering you. You're still evading. It's not that big a deal. I mean, if it's an hour on my channel, it's almost nothing, right? I'm not even getting guaranteed exposure on your channel, and you're still running away. And even I paid you $50. What? For an hour of your time, you feel cheated? Okay, how about asking one of your many physics friends, all the other shills and pompous douchebags that you associate with on the internet, that you're all networked with all your little buddies who all do your little flat earth mocking thing. Why don't you get one of them? Some of them have physics degrees. If they would like to debate the credibility of conventional physics. You say this is a debate channel, but apparently your own religion is a taboo subject. Alright, so he says, you have to be specific. You cannot ask for a debate on all of physics and then expect somebody to be able to prep for that. So again, that's never really been what I've asserted. I've never asked him to prep for all of physics. I've certainly mentioned the subjects and all that crap, so this isn't that difficult. If that is what you want, then yes, it will cost you $700 super chat, and I will give $100 of my share to charity. Well, what the fuck's a charity anyway? What charity? Because I'm sure I'll have good reason not to want that $100 to go to that charity, because the charity is probably worse than you. Anyway, however, narrow the field down, be specific, and I'll do it for free. So, again, there's no issue about this being specific. I mean, my channel is clearly specifically oriented on pretty elemental conclusions based on elemental experiments, fundamental experiments. The cornerstone experiments. More moving goalposts. So he always has excuses. Okay, I never asked to debate all of physics. I have always emphasized the key foundational experiments, the two-slit interferometers, the Eddington experiment, wave-particle duality, push gravity, etc. If you have any knowledge of the two-slit, I have completely debunked wave interference. So yes, video about 20 videos ago or so, whatever, 15. Theory as a reasonable explanation. So, I have completed the task. It's only a 30-minute video, and if you listen at 2x speed, it'll only consume 15 minutes of your time. And, it'll basically demonstrate that the mysterious two-slit experiment isn't so mysterious. If you understand it as 4 point sources, the surfaces, you can fully understand how straight lines, scatter, would perfectly explain the pattern. And so it's done. And waves can't. Two waves can't possibly make the pattern. There's no configuration where two waves works. Can't draw it, can't model it. The two-wave model fails. That's a fact. And I've demonstrated it. So this 200-year mystery, it's really all the way since Newton, isn't so mysterious anymore. I've solved the big problem. It's not at all complicated. It's really simple, and it's mechanical. But there's no woo mechanics, no quantum woo mechanics. Just what quantum mechanics should be is an understanding that everything is made out of the elemental energy bits, the clumps of energy that are moving things in the universe. Yeah, that's it. So anyway, we'll see if we get anything. We'll see what he says to that. I mean, maybe he'll watch the video, and maybe he'll concede that, oh yeah, you do have an argument. Okay, anyway. Oftentimes I see someone asking how mass bends space. It would just be interesting to know how exactly, yes, that this thing, whatever bent space is, how does space, whatever that is, get bent in 3 dimensions? How does that possibly happen in 3 dimensions? There is never a good answer. Yes, there never will be, because it's a ludicrous proposition, bending something in 3 dimensions. Doesn't make any sense. You can't do it. Bending is a 2-dimensional thing. 3-dimensional bending just doesn't work. Other students saying they think it may be force, but afraid to say because it seems like they do not understand. Well, the fact is it's taught as Mach gravity. It's taught as a force. It's taught as a fluid, okay, moving into a drain. So the matter bit is like a drain, and the fluid goes down the drain, and there's a constant source of fluid from the universe, and that's how they teach it. At the highest levels, that's what the math is. So clearly it's, again, returned to its real elemental function, which is it can be understood as a straight line force. And we're talking about point sources again, and light bulbs and all these other things that do exactly the same thing. I mean, if Newton had proposed bent ether as the reason why light travels through space, it doesn't really work as an analogy. But it's exactly doing the same thing in reverse. It's excreting a force. in 3 dimensions. And in those 3 dimensions, it'll do exactly the opposite of gravity in terms of being repulsive. All right. I love Linux. Yeah, well, we won't bother with that. But is there any material Draft would like to recommend for me? So this is always kind of interesting. I mean, obviously, if I knew of something else on the internet worth viewing, I'd link to it. I'd have promote it. I'd be all happy and probably wouldn't be the crank that I am. But the fact is no, everybody on this planet is a fucking imbecile, and apparently I'm the only one that can explain anything accurately and correctly existing on planet Earth, and especially when it comes to physics. Yeah, so there's just no other. All the dissidents are crazy. They commit exactly the same crimes as regular physics. They have no evidence. They just make up some preposterous woo. They all love some kind of, left field kind of physics, Tesla nuts, and they're all ether nuts or God nuts, and, they're not in it for the same reasons. They don't just do what I did, which is say bent space is silly, virtual photon is vacuous, that drawing of a photon is insanely crazy. That's why I'm in it, but they're in it for some other reason. Anyway, a person who went out of quantum cage and is looking for real physics. Yeah, well, that's the problem. It's motivation, right? I can't say that none of them just said, oh, these physics answers are silly. But they just went out and they just keep looking for sillier answers. You know what I mean? They do this. They keep making the same mistake, and they keep thinking, well, if I can't think of it, nobody can, or I don't know what. Look, I went down some wrong roads when I first started, so it happens. You try to explain it the way they have described the experiments, and then but you don't realize, oh, they misdescribed that experiment. It doesn't really exist. I mean, it's sort of hard to make the universe make sense mechanically if you really think photons are twice as affected by gravity. Then it's hard to make a theory of force that makes any sense, because you're saying, why aren't all the other forces the other stuff moving the speed of light? Why isn't it all bendable too? So so if you go with their wrong descriptions of reality, you'll end up at a wrong conclusion. So all the dissidents fail because they don't go far enough back and recognize that they just can't accept everything that modern physics says is true. Is there any intellectual work out there you really enjoyed? Yeah, sorry, it's just they're all bad movies. It's all bad, and could promote because it is smart and elegant. Yeah, nice. Phew, no, nothing. And professional. Oh, gee. And with real value. Yeah, sorry. I mean, there's real value in watching Professor Lewin and all these other things, because at least they do some experiments and some of what they're saying is right. You just can't allow them to interpret the evidence for you. You have to see it for what it is, and then understand that they might be just showing you one side of the story. There might be more to the story that they're not showing you. So you can't be fooled by their presentation methods. And such. Yeah, that's it. Superior mind. I don't, yeah, well, we'll try it. Apparently physicists know what photons are. Apparently physicists know that photons are fundamental, that you don't need any component interactions to detect a single photon. Well, I don't know if they know it. I mean, I think they do know that even though they say photons are all the same and they're all this and all that, I think they know that obviously frogs do see photons we don't see. So there is something important about how much energy is in the photon, how big it is or something, that there's some other feature that's clearly making that a reality. Now, some of them think that those are individual separate photons, but obviously it would be the quanta in the photon that would be the argument that is making for the size. So And all of that is so subject to interpretation in the sense that, it's hard to develop an experiment that can detect these subtle differences. 1 quanta versus 2 quanta versus 3 quanta is too small amount of energy for us to ever detect, and so we can only detect things by sending 1,000,000 photons and seeing a general result. We can't really see, this single bit of energy do anything, because the single bit does have to interact with a bunch of electrons. Different electrons have to interact for there to be a thing called a photon. I just don't think they think about it. But yes, I don't know what. I'd say every physicist might draw you a different picture of a photon if you ask them to draw you the one. Show me what a frog sees, and then show me the one that the human sees. That would be the interesting thing to see. Yet they also say it's a wave. I dare to suggest such a thing to people who claim to work for SpaceX. The result is it resulted in quite an extensive flat earth ridicule response. I responded to someone, energy and force are pretty much the same. Yes, all the forces are the only thing moving, and the matter only moves because it's forced to. So the matter does nothing, and the force does everything. So all the doing part is the force. And what is it doing? It's doing to the matter. Yeah, the matter's just the victim. The force is the predator, the matter's the prey. And was ridiculed and told that energy and force are two distinct things that exist in two different physical dimensions. Now, see, this is the weird part, right? Because there are no dimensions except 3 dimensions of direction. And that's it. There's 3 directions. There's only 3 dimensions that are perpendicular to the other 2 dimensions and all that kind of stuff. There's rules for what a dimension is. And so the word dimension doesn't mean anything. They've turned it into mush and just invented this notion that there's some 4th place. There's no 4th thing perpendicular to the other 3 things. It's just nonsense. Can't happen. There's 3 dimensions in physical space. The end. In the universal space. The end. That there's no other dimensions that there's any evidence really exist. Go back to school and take an entry-level physics course. Right, and what will be the entry-level physics experiments that proves the 4th dimension? Oh, that's right. There won't be any. Okay, apparently I'm also wrong that dipole alignment has anything to do with magnetism. Just using the word dipole is a little bit messy, but obviously that's all there is, right? So yeah, I could say something about magnetism, because it's just a filter, right? And the magnetic thing gives us a clue. Oh, it really is just obsessed. Anyway, camera, always looking where you're not supposed to. Alright, so the easy thing is a push-pull. I've done that, right? So obviously pushy. Straight line, yeah, simplest thing in the universe. Got to believe in straight lines. Straight lines run everything. Anytime you see a curved line, it's being made by straight lines. Okay, there's straight lines that are causing the curve. That's just too basic. And this third ingredient is, okay, the magnet. So the magnet is, the natural magnet is clearly doing something where, you have this fundamental change in the, and so I would argue that if you look at the magnets and you say, well, what's motivating them? You know that the energy has to be coming from something they're doing, okay, that doesn't take energy. All right, it doesn't consume the mass of the magnets. The mass, they don't get lighter, they don't turn color, they don't do any of this, they don't wear down, they're not using some reservoir of energy. So somehow for free, they're converting whatever the circumstance, right? I would say the external circumstance is the force is coming from the external world. And what the magnet's doing is filtering it, okay? So it's taking stuff that's coming in, and instead of the stuff going through, in a straight line, it's taking another straight line vector, okay, and it's leaving another direction. So you're getting a free turn right without consuming any energy. So this, something going straight, something interacting and continuing on its way is actually, oh, yeah, sorry about that. Is the same as this, turning. So no energy consumed to do this. That's sort of the argument being made. And I was thinking about how this could be done with modeling, right? Because you could have some system, some simple rule. All right, you have a line in a field of energy, just little bits moving in all kinds of directions, right? And you put the line in there and just make a simple rule that as it gets hit, it deforms, okay? It bends. It has a center that can bend. And if it bends, then the rule changes. Then any force going this way ends up bending this way, okay? And the force that goes this way reflects. So it ends up getting momentum in a direction. So the line will now move into a new position and a new position, as long as it keeps getting hit by force and something keeps rebending it, So, but you could have a really simple rule, and the simple rule will create a system that will get very complicated in terms of this single line will start to move all over the place and do all kinds of things and create obstacles to its own motion based on reflections off the wall and stuff like that, and you'll end up with a very complex movement of a thing. And it's not really going to consume any energy because the energy is in the box. And the little thing is just going to be moved by the energy, by how it subtly changes it by deflecting some of it and reflecting some of it. So based on the difference between a reflection and deflection, there'll be all kinds of change created in the position of that line. All right, but back to the magnet. So it's all for free, right? And so my simple argument is that, yes, the field contains two kinds of energy, A, B. And what's happening is it comes in mixed, purple, and it ends up leaving, all A's come out of here, and all the B's end up coming out of here. And that's your difference. All the red light comes out of one end, all the blue light comes out of the other end, and it filters it. And it doesn't consume any energy to do that. It doesn't use anything. It just filters it for free. And the trick is that when you electrify a conductor or a piece of metal, what you're doing is doing the same thing. You're creating these dipoles. So you're converting the atoms into atoms like iron that can be aligned. So we know that the iron atom, its individual atom, is a magnet. And all you're really doing is saying, well, we've got about a bunch of atoms in the iron that are misaligned. They're all pointing in different directions. So the red and blue light is getting mixed back into purple again. But if I line up all of the little filters the same way, then all the red light will end up coming out one end, all the blue light will come out the other end. And I can do the same thing to a conducting metal by just running electricity through it. I'll make the atoms into little magnets, and because the flow of electricity is in a direction, they'll all line up the same way, and while they line up the same way, they become a filter like this, and it won't be the energy going through that's causing the magnetism. It'll be the fact that now the atoms are all aligned like a magnet, and so they become filters themselves, and they will segregate red from blue. And obviously it takes a lot of electricity, so the lot of electricity is in amps, because you will have to affect as many atoms as possible. Just changing a few atoms with high voltage won't work. Changing a lot of atoms with a low voltage will work. So they create more magnetism. And so it explains that these things are all connected. It makes perfectly good sense. But this is the key thing, is this magnet creates change. This is, and it's just really charge. What you're really doing is just creating the charge fields. The plus and minus fields, however you want to describe it. The north-south is really the minus plus. And the only thing that makes magnets, the only problem is that when you have a magnet and then you expose it to charge, the problem is the magnet's a metal, and the external metal changes the domains on the surfaces, and it breaks the filter. So the magnet is no longer a magnet; it ends up being charged metal instead. And but that's really the only, it's the same force. It's just you can break magnetism by disturbing the filter, by making the atoms not align, and then they'll go back to being purple again. They'll go back to making purple light instead of blue and red. Yeah, it's a brief bit. Okay, the same, and was ridiculed and told that energy and force are two distinct things that exist in two physical dimensions. Go back to school. Okay, well, apparently I'm also wrong. Dipole alignment has anything to do with magnetism, and was dismissed as a ridiculous crackpot for saying so. So, yeah, I'm obviously asserting that the electron and proton, just as they are the electric monopoles, they are in fact the magnetic monopoles, because the two forces are actually the same force. Anyway, they then blocked me for bringing up physics because we were supposed to be talking about rockets when I was actually cautiously responding to someone else who brought up the subject of photons versus energy versus forces. Yes, because they're all seeking some sort of magical, free rocket fuel. After they kicked me, they started chatting about music and food. Yes, it's the cliche popcorn eaters. Anyway, so essentially, if you say even one thing that sounds a tiny bit different than what they're taught to believe, they have the knee-jerk reaction to dogpile hard on, and even though they're trolling you, you are the one that gets kicked. Yes, that's been every experience I've had on every physics board ever, is there's just no possible way you can suggest at all that a conversation about the foundational experiments would be fruitful. They have no interest. It's even worse than a religion. They deny their own physics just to try to make a mockery out of you, i.e. denying charge could have a mechanism or that magnetism has anything to do with dipoles. But more importantly, that it has something to do with monopoles. I mean, that's the one they're really denying. They claim to be true physicists. They claim to be smart and intelligent and respect the truth and the process, but obviously they don't respect any of those things. And it's made quite obvious. They don't respect logic. They don't respect vocabulary. They just don't. But I now have great doubts that they are. It's amazing level of arrogance and blind certainty. Worse than religion. Well, it's almost, just because they aren't stupid. I mean, religious people can't make smart arguments. These people can, and they're using their power to make smart arguments to say something so, it's just so overtly cowardly. At least in religion, they need to keep trying to convince themselves. With this sort of thing, they won't even consider the possibility that any of their pope could have been slightly misinterpreting even a single thing. Yeah, well, they're afraid of the, I was a sucker phenomenon. They don't want to admit they voted for the wrong man or whatever. It seems to be a very universal and ugly phenomenon. Yes, it does. And so they responded to some troll, but I guess I will not bother with that. Let's see. Just how many troll accounts do you have? Yes, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, alright, so that's enough of that. Yeah. I just, I have notes, so maybe I'll take a pause and just see what subject's worth going through. I already did a simplification of the rules argument. I sort of wanted to point out that, I mean, you can just have a really simple system with a very simple rule, and you can end up with a ton of complexity. And that's something that should underlie everybody's understanding of what physics is trying to do. Physics is trying to find that. The simple rule that leads to all kinds of complexifications in terms of the structure can evolve. By simple stages of just adding the rule plus the rule plus the rule plus the rule. Having the rule interact with its own accidents, you could say. But the important thing is just these fundamental perceptions of function. So I could just emphasize again the completely easy to understand difference between push and pull. That you can show push so easy, and there's just no way to really describe pull without push being involved. And that push is the elemental function. And this idea of the straight line, that things do travel these things called straight lines, and it's not until matter, a magnet or some other thing, gets in the way that the line goes in some new direction. And that's all that happens. It goes in a new direction. It doesn't cease to be straight. It ceases to be going straight in the same direction. It's going straight in a new direction. And that's all you need, is to turn those lines to create like an exo-sketch. You can create a very complex drawing out of just bending straight lines, of just turning straight lines. And that might be enough of a theme. So maybe I'll try to make another 2-slit video better than the last one. It's alright, but getting to the real key points as quickly as possible for those who can't tolerate the extra bits. There's always so much to do, so I will get around to doing some of this so much. So let me just pause, see if there's anything that comes to mind, but I'll see if anything comes to mind. That's probably a good place to. Well, the video is a little longer than I thought it was already, so it's good enough. So till the next time, and such, so forth and whatnot. Seems there's something else, but you'll have to wait until the next time.